The day Su Qingying's father slammed a 10 million yuan check into my face in my previous life, I tore it to pieces without hesitation. True love was priceless, but all I got in return was the contemptuous sneer at the corner of his lips and the increasingly cold look in Su Qingying's eyes. For the next 10 years, I lived lower than dust. I desperately chased after her shadow, doing everything I could just to stay close to her. In the end, during a business gala, I died protecting her from harm after one of her rivals stabbed me in a dark alley. Even in my final moment, the face I saw was still hers, completely calm, completely unmoved, as if I were nothing more than an irrelevant stranger. This time, I refused to be that pathetic dog who licked himself into having nothing left. So I smiled at Su Qingying's father with what was almost gratitude. "Thank you, uncle." My voice was not loud, yet it exploded through the luxurious private room like thunder. Su Jiangguo had clearly prepared a whole speech for me, but every word became stuck in his throat. The authority on his face instantly turned into confusion. He had probably imagined 100 different ways I might reject him, but he never expected me to smile and thank him. The mocking grin on Zhao Hui's face froze at once, like a duck that had suddenly been grabbed by the neck. And Su Qingying, the ice-cold goddess who always stood above everyone else and never revealed her emotions, showed a crack in that eternally frozen expression for the first time. Her pupils narrowed slightly. Her red lips parted, but no sound came out. Carefully, I folded the check and slipped it into the pocket of my faded jeans. Then I stood up and gave Su Jiangguo a slight bow. "Please rest assured, uncle. From today onward, I will never take the initiative to bother Miss Su Qingying again." After saying that, I turned toward Su Qingying. "For the past 3 years, I caused you a lot of trouble. I'm truly sorry. I wish you a bright future and a smooth path ahead." Her body trembled so slightly that most people would not have noticed it. At last, she truly looked at me. The coldness in her beautiful eyes had disappeared, replaced by shock so deep it seemed impossible to dissolve. Before she could say anything, I turned around and prepared to leave. "Chen An, I thought you had some backbone," Zhao Hui suddenly sneered. "But after all that, you're just a spineless guy who opens his eyes for money. You sold 10 years of feelings for 10 million yuan. You're really shameless." My steps paused. In my previous life, those exact words had pushed me completely over the edge. I had lunged at him and started fighting only to get beaten half to death by the bodyguards and leave in absolute humiliation. But this time, I simply turned back and looked at him calmly. There was no anger in my eyes, only faint pity. "Young Master Zhao, you're mistaken on 3 points. First, it wasn't 10 years. It was 3. Second, it wasn't a relationship. It was my one-sided obsession. Third, this isn't selling myself. This is reasonable compensation from Chairman Su for the hard work I put in over the last 3 years. I smiled faintly. After all, being a qualified lapdog takes time and energy too. 10 million yuan is neither too much nor too little. It's just right. I pulled open the heavy wooden door of the private room and walked out without looking back. Behind me, the room fell completely silent. The moment I stepped out of the hotel, the remaining sunlight stabbed into my eyes so sharply that they began to sting. I took out the check. That long string of numbers felt so real that it almost made me cry. To hell with her love. To hell with her dignity. I, Chen An, had been given another life. In this life, I would love no one. I would only love money. I did not rush to the bank to cash the check. An old fox like Su Jiangguo could easily have tampered with it. Maybe there was a waiting period. Maybe it was simply a worthless check designed to make me look stupid. What a scheme, Su Jiangguo. I called a cab and returned to my rented room in the urban village. The place was less than 10 square meters, dark and damp, with the air filled with the mixed smell of instant noodles and mildew. This was the miserable little room I had endured for 3 years in my previous life, all because I wanted to live closer to Su Qingying's university. I turned on my old laptop, which I had used for 5 years. The screen lagged for what felt like forever before finally lighting up. I did not start clicking around right away. Instead, I leaned back in my chair and began to think. What was the greatest advantage of being reborn? Information. I knew the economic trends of the next 10 years. I knew which stocks would skyrocket and which industries would rise to power. I opened the stock trading app and skillfully entered a code. Tengfei Technology. I remembered it clearly. Tomorrow, this unknown little company would announce a chip technology patent, and its share price would rise from 5 yuan all the way into the sky. I picked up my phone and called Su Qingying. "Everything you left at my place has been packed and placed outside the door. You can send someone to collect it whenever you want. Also, I changed my number. There's no need for us to contact each other again." Before she could respond, I hung up. Then I removed the SIM card, snapped it in half, and threw it into the trash. Finally, the world was quiet. Early the next morning, I went straight to the bank. To my surprise, cashing the check went incredibly smoothly. Only when my phone received a message confirming that my account balance had increased by 10 million yuan did I truly believe it. My life was really starting over. Without even a moment of hesitation, I transferred 9,900,000 yuan into my securities account and went all in on Tengfei technology. As I walked out of the securities exchange, my entire body suddenly felt lighter. Now, all I had to do was wait. I never returned to that moldy rental room. Instead, I booked an executive suite at the best hotel in the city center. I soaked in the bathtub, drank chilled champagne, and stared through the window at the dazzling city lights. For a moment, I felt almost dazed. In my previous life, I could only stand outside hotels like this, looking up at the lights on the top floor and imagining what kind of luxurious parties Su Qingying might be attending inside. But now, I was the one inside. Ding, my phone rang. It was a text message from an unfamiliar number. It was Su Qingying. Chen An, where are you? You threw away all the things I gave you. It seemed she had put in some effort to find my new number. The things she had given me were nothing but little trinkets she no longer wanted. A pen, a notebook. Every time she gave them to me, it was like she was tossing scraps to a beggar. Yet back then, I had treasured them like priceless gifts. I did not reply. I blocked the number immediately, then called the hotel's room service desk. Hello, please arrange for 2 professional massage therapists. In this life, I was going to treat myself properly. For the next week, I lived the laid-back life I had once dreamed about. Every day, I slept until I woke naturally. I enjoyed exquisite breakfasts at the hotel's rooftop restaurant, then spent my afternoons killing time at the gym or by the pool. People really do rely on clothing. That saying was absolutely true. Once I put on a perfectly tailored suit and wore a Patek Philippe on my wrist, every high-end place I entered welcomed me with humble smiles and attentive service. No one looked at me with scrutiny or contempt anymore. Money truly was a man's strongest source of confidence. As for Tengfei Technology's stock, I could not even be bothered to check it. I knew exactly what was coming. That night, I invited 2 hot models to drink with me at Yunding Tiangong, the most elite private club in Yun City. The music was deafening. Bodies swayed beneath the lights, and the air was filled with the scent of money and hormones. In my previous life, I had not even been qualified to step through this place's doors. But now I sat in its best booth, drawing attention from every direction. Young Master An, would you like another drink? One of the models asked sweetly as she pressed herself closer to me. I smiled and gently pinched her cheek. But before I could speak, I caught sight of a familiar figure from the corner of my eye. Su Qingying. Why was she here? Zhao Hui stood beside her, along with several rich second-generation heirs I did not recognize. Zhao Hui was bragging loudly about something, while Su Qingying wore the same cold expression as always, completely out of place amid the club's chaos. Then she saw me. The instant our gazes met, surprise flashed through her eyes. Then confusion and disgust. That's right, disgust. In her eyes, I was probably just trash, a man who had taken her father's money and come here to waste it on pleasure. Zhao Hui followed her line of sight. The moment he saw me, an exaggerated grin spread across his face. Without caring about the stares around him, he strode toward me. Well, if it isn't the famous Chen An, the great romantic himself. His voice was deliberately loud, drawing everyone's attention toward us. What's wrong? You took the 10 million yuan Uncle Su gave you and came here to enjoy yourself? Do you think you've already reached the peak of life? The people behind him immediately joined in with laughter. So this is the lapdog you were talking about, Brother Hui? He doesn't look like much. He sold himself for 10 million yuan? That's honestly embarrassing for men everywhere. The expressions on the 2 models beside me became awkward, and they started to rise from their seats. I gently pressed them back down, signaling for them not to move. Then, I lifted my glass and slowly swirled the whiskey inside. Without even looking at Zhao Hui, I said, Young Master Zhao, long time no see. How is your family business doing? I took a slow sip. I heard several of the Zhao Group's overseas projects seem to be having problems. The hell are you talking about? Zhao Hui snapped. I smiled. That port project in South Asia is about to be abandoned because of changes in local policy, isn't it? And the European chip distribution rights, weren't they snatched away by Jiangxi Capital? I leaned back casually. Those 2 deals alone must have cost your family at least 500 million yuan. I had learned all of that from financial news in my previous life. The moment Zhao Hui heard it, cold sweat appeared on his forehead. Those were internal company secrets. No one outside the board of directors should have known about them. How could a useless nobody like me know? How do you know that? He demanded. Did you investigate me? I placed my glass down and finally looked him directly in the eyes. Young Master Zhao, you think too highly of yourself. You're not important enough for me to investigate. I stood up. I was half a head taller than him, and as I looked down at him, my eyes were filled with contempt. Control that temper of yours. Don't go around barking and biting everyone like a rabid dog. The laughter around us slowly faded. Everyone could sense that something was wrong. Zhao Hui was completely overwhelmed by my presence. His mouth opened, but not a single word came out. His face shifted between red and pale, making him look utterly pathetic. I did not bother with him anymore. I pulled out a stack of cash from my wallet and placed it on the table. "Ladies, you worked hard tonight. Take a cab home." After that, I adjusted my suit collar and walked straight past Zhao Hui. As I passed Su Qingying, I paused for a moment. She stared at me, and the shock in her eyes was even stronger than it had been inside that private room. She probably could not understand how the poor boy who had been humble to the point of dust just days ago had suddenly become so unfamiliar, so sharp. The corner of my mouth lifted into a meaningful smile. "Classmate Su, you should be more accurate when judging people." Then I turned around and left, leaving behind nothing but a decisive silhouette and a room full of dropped jaws. "You were never unreachable. It was just that now I was too lazy to keep looking up at you." After leaving the club, I did not return to the hotel. Instead, I drove straight to the airport. Yun City carried far too many painful memories from my previous life. Now that I had earned my first fortune, it was time to go somewhere else and begin my new life. My flight took off before dawn. My destination was the Magic City, the international metropolis where gold and opportunities could be found everywhere. On the plane, I switched off my phone, leaned back in the comfortable first-class seat, and fell into a deep sleep. When I opened my eyes again, the plane had already landed at Pudong International Airport. As I walked out of the airport and breathed in the fresh air of the Magic City, I felt like a warrior who had been completely reborn. I did not rush to buy a house. Instead, I rented a long-term residence at Thompson Riviera, the most luxurious serviced apartment complex beside the Huangpu River. Standing before the 360-degree floor-to-ceiling windows, overlooking the dazzling night view of the Bund, I knew it. This was my true stage. The next day, as soon as the stock market opened, my securities manager called me. His voice trembled with excitement. "Mr. Chen, it rose. Tengfei Technology hit the daily limit." I only gave a calm hum. "Keep holding. Don't sell before it reaches 150. Then I hung up. It was time to plan my next move. Money made from stocks was only fast money. It had no stable foundation. I wanted to build my own business empire. With the memories of my rebirth, I knew that over the next few years, internet healthcare, new energy vehicles, and artificial intelligence would become the three biggest opportunities of the era. I spent a week creating a detailed business plan. I was going to establish an investment company dedicated to targeting promising startup businesses in those fields. 1 month later, Tengfei Technology's share price rose exactly as I had predicted, climbing crazily all the way to 150 yuan. And my funds had grown from the original 9,900,000 yuan. My dynasty capital was officially established in the Magic City. Its office was located on the top floor of the Shanghai World Financial Center in Lujiazui, facing the Oriental Pearl Tower across the river. I began building my team, offering salaries far above the industry standard to poach the best analysts and traders from major investment banks. At first, those elites had plenty to say about a young kid in his early 20s becoming their boss. But after I accurately predicted 3 US stock market circuit breakers and led them in shorting the market, earning $50 million in a single day, every one of them shut their mouths. The way they looked at me changed from doubt to respect, and finally to fanatical worship. In their eyes, I was no longer their boss. I was a god. My life became busier and busier after that. Every day brought endless meetings, endless reports, and endless people to meet. Slowly, I forgot Yun City. I forgot Su Qingying. I forgot all those unbearable memories from my past life. Until one day, my secretary handed me an invitation. Next week, an international business summit will be held at the Shenzhen Convention and Exhibition Center. This invitation was sent by the organizers. I took it and gave it a casual glance. But when my eyes landed on the list of co-organizers, my fingers paused. The Su Group. They really were impossible to get rid of. Decline it for me. My secretary looked troubled. This summit is extremely high profile. Nearly half of the Fortune Global 500 companies will be attending. And Mr. Li, the organizer, specifically requested your presence. Mr. Li, the son of Hong Kong's richest man and the host of this summit. I frowned slightly. In my previous life, I had only ever seen this man in the news, yet now he was personally asking to meet me. It seemed Dynasty Capital's reputation in the Magic City had already spread. Fine, we'll go. I wanted to see what kind of expressions the Su family would have when we met again. On the day of the business summit, I entered the convention center, surrounded by several bodyguards. The venue was packed with powerful figures and wealthy guests. Nearly every person who passed by me was a familiar face from from financial magazines. And my appearance quickly stirred up a wave of quiet discussion. So that's Chen An from Dynasty Capital? He's so young. I heard he made 50 million US dollars in one day by shorting the US market. That guy is a complete genius. I ignored the whispers around me and walked straight toward the main hall. The moment I entered, I saw several familiar figures, Su Jiangguo, Su Qingying, and Zhao Hui, following behind them like a shadow. They were gathered around a dignified middle-aged man, smiling and speaking with an attitude so respectful it was almost humble. That had to be Mr. Li. Su Jiangguo's face carried barely concealed anxiety. He seemed to be explaining something to Mr. Li. I did not even need to think about it to know what was happening. The Zhao family had run into trouble, and it had dragged the Su family down with them. I had known it in my previous life. The two families' businesses were tied far too closely together. When one prospered, the other benefited. When one fell, the other suffered. The Zhao family's overseas projects had collapsed, so the Su family's cash flow must have broken as well. They had probably come here today to ask Mr. Li for help. Too bad they were begging the wrong person. A man at Mr. Li's level only helped those who were already thriving. He never wasted resources trying to save a sinking ship. Then my eyes met Su Qingying's again. A few months had passed, and she had grown thinner. Her brows were tightly furrowed with worry that could not be hidden. Yet she was still so beautiful that people could not help looking at her twice. The moment she saw me, her entire body froze. The shock in her eyes was 100 times stronger than it had been at Yunding Tiangong. She probably never imagined that the man standing before her now, surrounded by people and carrying such a sharp, overwhelming presence, was the same poor boy who had once played guitar beneath her apartment building and been dismissed by her father with a check. Su Jiangguo saw me as well. His expression was so colorful that it looked as though he had swallowed a fly alive. His mouth opened, but the name Chen An became stuck in his throat. No matter how hard he tried, he could not force it out. Only Zhao Hui reacted differently. The instant he saw me, hatred exploded in his eyes. He blamed me for his family's downfall. Without caring where he was or who was watching, he charged toward me. His voice was hoarse and crazed, immediately attracting the attention of the entire hall. My bodyguard stepped forward at once and blocked his path. I did not even glance at him. Mr. Li, I've heard so much about you. Mr. Li was slightly taken aback, then reached out and shook my hand. So you're Chen An. You truly are impressive for someone so young. His Mandarin carried a Hong Kong accent, and his admiration was impossible to hide. Chen An, just you wait, Zhao Hui continued roaring behind me. I will never let you get away with this. Mr. Li frowned and gave a subtle signal to his assistant. Several security guards immediately stepped forward and dragged Zhao Hui away like he was a sack of garbage. Su Jiangguo's face turned pale. He wanted to plead for Zhao Hui, but he did not dare say a word. Su Qingying stared at me intensely, her eyes full of humiliation, unwillingness, and confusion so deep it could not be resolved. Mr. Li, I apologize for disturbing your mood, I said. Mr. Li waved his hand, then looked at me with interest. I heard Mr. Chen has been making frequent moves in the Magic City lately. Your judgment is accurate, and your methods are ruthless. Just small business. You're flattering me. The two of us continued chatting as though no one else existed, leaving Su Jiangguo and Su Qingying standing awkwardly beside us. The atmosphere became so uncomfortable it nearly froze. Su Jiangguo's old face shifted between red and white. How could he have imagined that the young man he had once dismissed so easily with 10 million yuan would one day be chatting and laughing with Mr. Li as an equal? Was there anything more ironic in this world? In the end, he forced himself to step forward. Mr. Chen, it's been a long time. Isn't this Chairman Su? I replied. You're here too? My words struck Su Jiangguo's face like a merciless slap. The muscles in his cheeks twitched. He forced out a smile. Mr. Chen, you must be joking. Such a major summit is naturally a good place for the Su group to come and learn. Learn? I smiled. But I heard the Su group has been having some financial difficulties lately. Aren't you here looking for investment? Su Jiangguo's face instantly went deathly pale. With that one sentence, I had publicly ripped away the last shred of dignity he had left. Behind him, Su Qingying swayed as though she might collapse. Her lips were pressed tightly together, her fingernails digging into her palms. The way she looked at me was filled with humiliation and fury. I wanted her to taste it too, even if it was only 1/10,000th of what I had experienced in my previous life, the feeling of having your dignity crushed beneath someone else's feet. Don't go too far, Su Qingying finally said. Her voice trembled. Too far? I looked at her. When your father threw 10 million yuan in my face, why didn't you say that was too far? When you threw away the things I gave you like garbage, why didn't you say that was too far? My voice was not loud, but every word stabbed straight into her heart. Why do you always get to stand above everyone else? Because of that beautiful face of yours? Or because of that father of yours whose company is about to collapse? The color color drained completely from Su Qingying's face. The air around us seemed to freeze. Everyone was stunned by the sudden confrontation. Mr. Chen, Su Jianguo finally could not endure it any longer. His voice carried a pleading tone now. We were wrong in the past. I apologize to you. But please, show mercy. Spare the Su group. He had actually lowered his head to me in public. But as I watched his pathetic appearance, I did not feel even the slightest satisfaction. All I felt was emptiness. I had wasted an entire lifetime on people like this. My previous self had truly been ridiculous. Chairman Su, the business world is a battlefield. Either you die, or I do. Why should I show mercy? If Mr. Chen is willing to help, Su Jianguo said desperately, I'm willing to transfer 30% of the Su group's shares to you for free. He had revealed his final card. A wave of shocked murmurs swept through the hall. Even in crisis, the Su group was still worth billions. 30% of its shares was nearly worth 1 billion yuan. He was willing to pay such an enormous price. Are you crazy? Su Qingying blurted out, but Su Jianguo ignored her completely. He only stared at me with eyes that were almost begging. Slowly, I shook my head. I have no interest in the Su group's shares. Su Jianguo's heart sank completely. Then, after a brief pause, my eyes shifted to Su Qingying behind him. A playful smile appeared at the corner of my mouth. However, if Miss Su is willing to have dinner with me, perhaps I can consider it. The instant those words fell, the entire hall became terrifyingly quiet. Every gaze turned toward Su Qingying. Some were sympathetic, some pitied her, but most of them watched with the excitement of people enjoying a show. That was the reality of the business world. The strong devoured the weak. Only the winners had the right to make the rules, and even trample upon the most genuine dignity of others. Su Qingying's body began shaking violently. Humiliation, anger, unwillingness, and pain all surged across her stunning face, mixing together until she looked like a white flower trembling in a brutal storm. She glared at me as if her eyes could burn holes through my body. Chen An, you're dreaming. The words were squeezed out through clenched teeth. I shrugged without caring. Then, there's nothing more to discuss. Su Jianguo grabbed my arm. His voice was already breaking as though he were about to cry. Mr. Chen, she's young and doesn't understand. Please don't hold it against her. It's only one dinner. No, even 10 dinners would be fine. I'll agree on her behalf. Then he suddenly turned toward Su Qingying and shouted harshly, Do you want to watch the Su family collapse right in front of you? What are you standing there for? Hurry up and agree to Mr. Chen. The confrontation between father and daughter became the most eye-catching scene in the entire hall. Su Qingying looked at her furious father, then at me, standing there with no expression on my face. Finally, tears spilled from her eyes. It was the first time I had ever seen this ice-cold goddess cry. Tears rolled down her pale cheeks, giving her a broken, fragile kind of beauty. But my heart did not move at all. If you knew this day would come, why choose that path in the first place? Every tear you shed now was caused by choices you made yourself. In the end, beneath her father's pressure and the crushing weight of reality, she gave in. Fine. She looked at me, her voice hoarse. I agree, I smiled. Good. I took out my phone. Give me your number. I'll inform you of the time and location. Su Qingying mechanically recited a string of numbers. I saved it, then entered a new contact name. 10 million yuan miss. After that, I did not look back again. I walked with Mr. Li toward the VIP lounge, leaving Su Jianguo and Su Qingying behind to endure the countless stares coming from every direction. I knew that from this moment onward, the goddess-like halo around Su Qingying had been completely shattered, and the person who had shattered it with his own hands was me. Yet the thrill of revenge was not as overwhelming as I had expected. Instead, a faint emptiness rose in my chest. Maybe the moment I reached out and accepted that 10 million yuan check, the Su Qingying in my heart had already died. Everything I was doing now was nothing more than digging through dirt before a grave that had long gone cold. My meeting with Mr. Li went very smoothly. He valued Dynasty Capital's potential and the decisiveness I had shown. He hoped to work with me more deeply in the new energy sector. It was exactly what I wanted. We quickly reached an agreement and signed a preliminary strategic cooperation contract worth 5 billion yuan on the spot. The moment the news spread, the entire summit was shaken. Dynasty Capital, a new company established less than half a year earlier, had become one of the most watched rising investment firms in the Magic City, and even across the entire country. And I, Chen An, had finally made it onto the front pages of China's top financial media. At the summit banquet that night, I became the undisputed center of attention. Countless business leaders and wealthy elites raised their glasses and came forward, hoping to talk with me and build connections. I handled every conversation with ease. Yet from time to time, my eyes still drifted toward Su Qingying in the corner. She sat there alone, her figure thin and lonely, completely out of place amid the lively banquet hall. Several arrogant young heirs tried to approach and boast in front of her, but her cold gaze forced every one of them away. She was like an injured white swan, holding her head high while secretly licking her wounds alone. Halfway through the banquet, my phone vibrated. Su Qingying had sent me a message. There was only one word. whispered. There. The corner of my lips curved slightly. I replied with 2 words. Rooftop. I put down my glass and walked alone toward the hotel's rooftop terrace. The night wind brushed against my face, cool and comfortable. I lit a cigarette and looked down at the brilliant city lights beneath me. My heart was completely calm. Not long after, the sound of high heels came from behind me. Su Qingying had arrived. She stopped several steps away and remained silent. The two of us simply stood there in silence. You've changed, she finally said after a long time. People change. I exhaled a stream of smoke. The ones who don't change are the ones who get eliminated. Do you hate me? She asked again. I turned around and looked at her. Under the moonlight, her face was so beautiful that it hardly seemed real. Those eyes that had always been as cold as ice were now filled with emotions too complicated to describe. Su Qingying, you think too highly of yourself. I stared directly at her. Hating someone takes effort too, and you're not worth wasting even a fraction of my effort on. Her body swayed and her face turned even paler. Then why are you doing this to me? To the Su family? Why? I almost laughed at how absurd that question sounded. You're actually asking me why. When your father threw money in my face, you stood there and watched coldly. When Zhao Hui humiliated me again and again, you acted like you saw nothing. I gave everything I had for you, but in your eyes, I was worth less than nothing. And now you're asking me why. I stepped closer, 1 step at a time. The pressure coming from me was so heavy that she could barely breathe. I'll tell you why. I leaned close to her ear, my voice soft but perfectly clear. Because I want to. I enjoy watching all of you fall from the clouds. I enjoy watching that ridiculous pride of yours get crushed beneath my hand. I simply find it satisfying. Tears burst from Su Qingying's eyes once again. This time, she could no longer hold herself back. She raised her hand and slapped me across the face. Smack! The sharp sound echoed across the silent rooftop. I did not dodge. That slap seemed to sever the final thread connecting her and me. I raised my hand, touched my cheek, and smiled. Very good. Then I straightened up and looked at her. Consider that slap the interest you owe me. Tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. Number 18 on the Bund. I'll be waiting. After saying that, I turned around and left. I left her standing alone in the rooftop wind, crying so hard that her entire body shook. The following evening, I arrived early at the Western restaurant in number 18 on the Bund. I had reserved the entire restaurant. Outside the enormous floor-to-ceiling windows was the most dazzling night view on both sides of the Huangpu River. The sound of a violin flowed softly through the air. Candlelight flickered. Roses filled the room with their fragrance. The atmosphere was so romantic that it was almost perfect. At exactly 7 o'clock, Su Qingying arrived. She had clearly dressed up carefully. Her long hair was tied up, revealing the elegant line of her neck. Her light makeup was exquisite, covering the exhaustion from the previous day. She looked like a painting, but her eyes were empty. There was nothing left inside them except numbness. Like a doll that had lost its soul, she slowly sat down across from me. What would you like to eat? Order whatever you want. I pushed the menu toward her. She did not even look at it. Anything is fine. I said nothing more and ordered several of the restaurant's signature dishes for her. Throughout the entire meal, neither of us spoke. Only the faint sound of knives and forks touching porcelain plates remained, mixed with the occasional horn of a cruise ship drifting in from outside. The air was so oppressive that it nearly stopped moving. I calmly cut into my steak, watching the way she sat there restlessly. I knew she was waiting for me to state my conditions, but I refused to do it. I wanted to make her wait. The meal lasted nearly 2 hours. Only after the waiter cleared away the dinner plates and brought out dessert did Su Qingying finally break. What exactly do you want? She looked at me, and there was despair in her voice. I put down my fork, picked up my napkin, and wiped the corner of my mouth. Why are you in such a hurry? I looked at her lazily. Miss Su, how much do you think tonight's dinner is worth? What do you mean? I pointed at the view outside the window, then at the exquisite dishes on the table. This meal, this setting, and the time I've spent here with you. Do you think it's worth 1 billion yuan? She understood. I was humiliating her again. I was returning the humiliation her father had once given me, multiplied many times over. Her lips trembled, but she could not say a single word. It seems Miss Su doesn't think it's worth that much. I smiled and snapped my fingers. The restaurant manager immediately came over. Mr. Chen, what can I do for you? The bill, of course. The bill was brought over quickly. Without even looking at it, I placed it in front of Su Qingying. Not too much, right? Su Qingying stared at the long string of numbers on the bill. Her hands trembled slightly. This meal cost 200,000 yen. She could not afford it. Well, that makes things difficult. I stood up and walked to her side, leaning down close to her. Miss Su, you should know that I hate it most when people owe me money. Then, in a voice only the two of us could hear, I whispered, how about this? You stay behind and repay me in some other way. The implication in my words was completely unmistakable. Su Qingying's body stiffened instantly. She looked up at me in disbelief, her eyes filled with fear and disgust. She probably truly believed that I was going to do something to her. Seeing the panic on her face, the last trace of my malicious amusement was finally satisfied. I straightened up, pulled out a black card from my wallet, and tossed it onto the table. Forget it. This meal is on me. I looked down at her. The only things left in my eyes were pity and mockery. Su Qingying, remember this. Right now, you are not even qualified to be humiliated by me. As for the Su family, I can't even be bothered to make another move against you. Live or die on your own. After saying that, I turned and walked away without looking back. Behind me, I heard her suppressed sobs. This time, I did not stop, not even for a second. The story between Su Qingying and me ended here, completely and forever.